Hey y'all, this is Miss Franklin. I hope you're all staying safe and I miss you so much. So let's think back to before we got out for break, and one of the things we kept saying we were going to come back to is telling time when we got a free minute. So I know this is something that we should have, mastered a little bit long ago, but sometimes we just need a quick refresher. So that's what we're going to do here today. We are going to look at how to tell time on an analog clock. And the reason we're doing this is because your three favorite questions are, can I move? Can I go to the bathroom? And what time is it? So I want you to be able to answer that last question for yourself whenever you need to. What time is it? So the clock we have in our classroom is an analog clock. That means it has the hour hand and the minute hand, and you have to look at those two hands to figure out what time it is. Our hour hand is going to be our short hand, and our minute hand is going to be the long hand. And you're going to see that in just a second. But we also need to know that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour, and there are 24 hours in a day. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to switch the camera around and show you a different screen. So if you look here, this comes from a website. It's called toytheater.com/clock. And this is an interactive clock. It has this is a minute hand and the hour hand, and you can tell the difference because if we get them close together, you can see the hour hand is significantly shorter than the minute hand. So our hour hand comes first, and that represents our first number. And kind of like a ratio, a clock is separated with a colon. So down here, I'm going to turn off this digital feature so it doesn't tell us this. So let's look at what we have here first. If we start at the top and we go clockwise, so like the clock goes, I know we've talked about that in a few lessons before. We start at 12 and then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way back to 12. If you think about it in a day, there is 1 o'clock a.m. and 1 o'clock p.m. So for a whole day, the clock has to go around twice. The hour hand has to go around this whole clock twice to make a day. Also, between the numbers, if you notice, there's some spaces. So up here, we start at 0, and then from 12 to 1, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So that's where we get this number. So at 12, our minutes would be 0 because that's second. And then if our minute hand was on 1, it would be 5. So from 1 to 2, we increase by 5, and then we increase by 5 more. So you might have already assumed that we're counting by 5s here. So now let's look at this on an actual clock. So let's just pick a time. Let's say, let's go for 11 o'clock. So if you notice here, our hour hand is pointing towards 11. It's exactly on 11, so we're going to use that number. If it was on this side of 11, we couldn't use it. It has to be either exactly on 11 or a little past it in order for it to be 11 o'clock. Our minute hand is on 12, which corresponds with those 2 zeros up there. So if we were to write this out, we would have 11 and then colon 0, 0. So that would be right at 11. So now let's move our minute hand. Let's move it to the 1. So if you notice, as I move this minute hand, our hour hand is also moving just a little bit. It didn't move much. So you can kind of see there's a little dash line right there. It was directly on the 11. Now it moved over just a little tiny bit. So our hour hand is still going to be 11, even though it's a little past it. It's not to 12 yet. So we still say 11. So our hour hand, like I said, is first. So we have 11. And then let's see what our minute hand corresponds with. So we follow it up, and it's at 5. So if we were to count the spaces, just to prove this is right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So our time is 11:05. Now let's move our minute hand down just a little bit, and we're going to stop right here. So you can see our hour hand moved a little bit more, but it's still between 11 and 12. So our hour is going to be 11. Now let's look at our minute hand. We're going to follow it down, and it's not directly on a big number. So between 3 and 4, I see that. Here starts 15 and here is 20. So let's count our spaces. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So our time is going to be 11 because that's where our hour hand is pointing. And then our minutes is going to be 14 because it's 19 because it's 1 above 20. There we go. Now let's move it a little past halfway. So we're going to stop here. So now our hour hand is directly between those two. But since it hasn't passed 12, we're still going to use that 11. So between 6 and 7, we have 30 and 35. So let's count our minutes. We have 30 right here, then 31, 32, 33. So we said our hour is 11, and our minutes are going to be 33. So 11:33. Now let's see if we can get it close to that next hour. We'll move it right there. So I want you to look closely at our hour hand right there. If you can see that little dashed line, it's close to 12, but it's not quite there yet. So we're still going to use 11. And now let's look between 10 and 11. 10 corresponds with the 50-minute mark, and then 11 corresponds with 55. Well, I don't want to count all those, so I see that it's 1 less than 55. So 1 less than 55 would be 54. So our time should be 11, and then our minute is 54. Now I'm going to move the minute hand around, and I just want you to see what happens. I'm going to move it slow as I move the minute hand around 1 revolution or 1 full time around this clock. So I'm going to move it a little quickly this first time. So I want you to pay attention to what happens to the hour hand between 1 and 2 as I move the minute hand 1 complete circle. So as we move that minute hand 1 complete circle, our hour hand went from 1 to 2. So that tells us that for every time this minute hand makes a complete circle, that's 1 hour that passes. So like I said in the very beginning, there are 24 hours in a day, and if we know a clock has 12 hours on it, we can divide 24 by 12 to get 2. And that tells us for 1 day, this hour hand makes 2 complete revolutions or 2 complete circles around this clock. So what I'm going to challenge you to do is at your house, if you have a digital clock somewhere and you have an analog clock somewhere, get rid of the digital clock and just look at the analog clock. If you have an Apple Watch or a smartwatch like that, change your watch face from a digital clock to an analog clock, so you really have to stop and think about it. If you're completely familiar with this and you know exactly what you're doing, take away the 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, and 11 and try that way. Or you can substitute your numbers for Roman numerals. We talked about that a little bit. And that's just one way you can challenge yourself. On this website, you can turn on and off the digital feature right here to check yourself. And you can look at this 1 hand at a time. So I know for some of you this was definitely a review. For others, this may have been the first time that you've actually sat down and really looked at how to tell time on this type of clock. So I'm going to challenge you in your house to change those around. Make yourself do it. If you don't have access to this website, one of the things you can do is take a paper plate and you can make your own clock. So mine's a little not completely perfect, but you can kind of tell. It's easier to do when it's laying flat. But I did this with a paper plate and then a thumbtack, and then I took 2 pieces of paper and made my hands, and it works just the same. You're just going to have to move them around with your fingers. Before we get off today, I want to talk to you about the resources portal that's put together by the school district. So to access this, you go to websterpsb.org, and that's going to take you to the school website. From there, you're going to click on the COVID-19 resources menu picture. It has like a blue mask on it and writing in red. You can click on that and it's going to take you to a new window. From that window, you can click on Home Learning and Review, and that's going to take you to a tab that has different grade levels. You're going to select your grade level, and then from there, you're going to select your subject, and it's going to pull up different resources and materials you can use to learn from home during this time. If you need to contact me, please do. I would love to hear from you. My email is macy.franklin@websterpsb.org. Or you can call or text me through Remind, and if I don't answer right away, I will get back to you as soon as possible. I miss you all, and I hope you're staying safe. I can't wait to see you soon. Bye.